I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
I guess to suck less.
The diabolical leader of the Headlock Squad.
Hey everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to the newest episode of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. So today we're doing a repost, and what's fun about this one is I was going through it, and my next guest, Chris Paynes, and we have 9 podcasts together that I just found by searching both of our names on YouTube. I don't know if we have more together than that. It's kind of like half and half between my show, the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, and his show, the Villain Cast. And what's cool about this interview is it's our first conversation ever. Now Chris and I he's taught at my gym, I think 3 different times, and he and I have gotten to spend a lot of time together, have a ton of jiu-jitsu conversations. But what is interesting to me is like looking back to 2020 when we did this interview and kind of just seeing how much my mindset has evolved and also how much Chris's mindset has evolved since then. And it's back to this same idea that I remember telling this to one of my students maybe 7 or 8 years ago at this point, and it was something along the lines of, you may ask me a question today, and then you may ask me a question 5 years from now, and I may give you 2 totally different answers. But the beauty of jiu-jitsu is neither answer has to be wrong. They can both be the correct answer. And what's cool is when you think in this way, a lot of times your answers each time, you are just trying to go deeper and you're just trying to learn more. And that's really a habit that I think I learned, or at least I really tried to get better at when I got to be around Chris. Chris was so confident in the concepts that he was sharing and the ideas that he was sharing. And even though I was teaching my students at this time in concept and kind of inventing my own concepts and my own ideas and discovering my own ideas on jiu-jitsu, but what happened after this interview was it was almost like, and we both I think would agree to this, because in the middle of this interview, Chris and I kind of like stop. We start to go, like, I kind of go off script. I start to go, hey, are you me but in England? I don't understand. And then fast forward, I'll give you guys a spoiler, Chris and I had never gotten to see each other's jiu-jitsu. And what ends up happening is he comes down, teaches at my gym when he's doing an American tour, and he teaches this idea of kind of how to defend everything. He teaches this idea of protecting your armpits, behind your knees, your hips. And to me, I look back and I see how I explained jiu-jitsu and understood jiu-jitsu before that and how I see it now. And that seminar and these conversations I've gotten to have with Chris, really, they help me see jiu-jitsu the way that I see it now. And so I'm always appreciative of that with Chris. But I also like seeing how we used to think. And even though 3 years ago we used to think, he and I both would think in these certain ways, I think now, if we broke down this episode, both of us disagree with a lot of stuff that we used to say. And so that is what's really cool about this episode, is just seeing young Chris and Josh talking a little more jiu-jitsu, discussing a few ideas, and that's pretty much that. I think I will stop rambling and we will go ahead and jump into today's episode. Enjoy the first conversation that I ever got to have with my good friend, Chris Paynes.
Chris, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good, thanks, dude. How are you doing today?
I am doing excellent. I wanted to just get started right off the top. And you have a really interesting lineage in jiu-jitsu. So I think if I get the story right, you were Elio Gracie's taxi driver, and he taught you himself jiu-jitsu for 20 years, right? And that's how you learned jiu-jitsu directly from the source. Am I correct?
yeah, that's I think the reason why I've taken a more conceptual approach is that because I couldn't drill in the taxi, he just like was talking to me fucking nonstop, and I just learned jiu-jitsu that way, just like listening to him instead of actually drilling. Which, sadly, that's closer to the truth than I'd like to admit. Apart from the Elio Gracie part, I think I was probably barely alive when he died. Yeah, I think the whole like not drilling is pretty much how I do jiu-jitsu anyway.
And so, what was your start? Where did you get your start to jiu-jitsu?
So officially, I've never done it. I started in traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu back when I was 13. I got my black belt in that when I was 21. It was like very much like the Kempo style, so it was like karate punches and judo-esque throws. And we did like some groundwork, but it was like it never featured the guard or anything like that. So it was pretty much only getting scarf hold, and the first person to get scarf hold from like a tussle kind of won. I'd never heard of MMA really at that point. I'd never heard of BJJ. And then I got my black belt, and I heard there was going to be a judo newaza competition. And being a young 20-something, I was quite naive and I thought, yeah, I'm a black belt. I'm going to win that. So I signed up for it. And then about 2 weeks before the competition, I'd heard of this gym, this submission wrestling gym called Fighting Fit in a nearby town. So I went and tried out. I went there thinking, I'm a black belt. I'm going to kick these guys' asses. I'm pretty sure my coach put me in hospital the first night. Like he wrecked me. I was like, oh no, I don't know how to fight. So I went to this competition with 2 days worth of like actual grappling experience. And I think my first fight was against a blue belt, BJJ blue belt, and he just smashed me to death. I think my second fight was against a judo black belt, who then smashed me to death. And I think my third fight was against a BJJ purple belt. He's a black belt now, it's Paul Cole in the UK. I'm pretty sure he flying armbarred me from kneeling. And so at that point, I thought, I'm going to have to actually learn to grapple. So I joined Fighting Fit and did the submission wrestling there. But back in those days, there was no actual technique, as it were. We had close guard and butterfly. If you stood up, you both stood up. So there was no such thing as De La Riva. And we went back to wrestling. And we did guillotines, triangles, heel hooks, and neck cranks, and that was it. And then I bought like the Eddie Bravo books, and I was watching a lot of Submissions 101, as we all did back in those days. And that was about 2009. End of 2009, both my coaches left, and they were like, "Chris, we look after the gym till we get back," because I was like the person who had the most technique because I'd read a few books. I was like, "Cool, yeah, I'll look after the gym till you get back." That was 10 years ago. I don't think they're coming back. And so I've been waiting since then. I'm the caretaker coach. End of 2010, it hit minus 14 degrees Celsius in the gym. And the water in the toilet froze, and like the taps wouldn't turn on. And we were rolling in hoodies. And we bought gis because we thought, well, it's going to be warmer than rolling in hoodies. We'll do what those jiu-jitsu guys do. And so we were pretty much just no-gi submission wrestlers that wore gis because it was cold. Then I used to enter like lots of like competitions, like jiu-jitsu competitions. But I was like winning a lot of the white belt stuff. So I used to take my white belt off and put a blue belt on. I like self-promoted. And then I take my blue belt off and put my white belt back on. And then 2013, I met Christian Graugart, the head of Globetrotters. I just read his book, and he did a seminar in the UK. So I went up to meet him, and we got a train back to Manchester together. He talked about this idea of like this non-affiliation for like independent gyms. I was like, well, yeah, sign us up. We're an independent gym. And then like a couple months later, he said, look, we're going to do like a get together for us. And that was the first camps. So I went to one of those first camps, and he watched me roll with a bunch of people I rolled with him. He was like, dude, why aren't you a blue belt? I was like, I don't do jiu-jitsu. I don't have a coach. So he pretty much went back to the store cupboard and just got one, threw one at me. And that's pretty much my promotions since then, was like I was going to the Globetrotter camps, getting belts thrown at me every now and then. And then I met Preet Mickelson just before he turned famous. And he was just some quiet guy from Estonia. He bullied me as a purple belt. And I was like, this stuff's magic. So I started to then pay for him to come to the UK, and I was going to Estonia. And then that was the first time I actually had any sort of jiu-jitsu lineage, was like meeting Preet as a brown belt. But even then, like it was pretty much the entire route up until that point was self-taught, as it was just videos, it was books, it was occasionally going to the odd gym, like maybe once every 6 months and doing a random class. But other than that, it was just, how to get a black belt via YouTube. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the first people to actually do it. As much as everyone jokes about it, like I think I actually did it. I think I pulled it off, guys. It's possible.
And and you're also to stress this. You're also a black belt. You're not, I mean, it's not like you're a guy that wrapped a black belt around his waist. And you teach at the Globetrotter camps, which is not like, they don't just ask bums to do that. As far as I know, maybe you secretly are. I don't know. But then as a competitor too, you've done well as a competitor. You compete. You do you do jiu-jitsu, and that's one of like the coolest points, and we're already to it. It's very early in the show, but I really want to get across is that you learned jiu-jitsu on your own, or grappling on your own, and it is good. It is. So would you say, and this is something I was curious about, as you're being self-taught, would you say when you're a brown belt and maybe you're not getting to cross-train at a lot of gyms, you're learning a lot of stuff on YouTube, would you say that as a brown belt, there were any glaring holes in your jiu-jitsu game?
Yes. So I literally abandoned everything I knew about grappling as a brown belt. So I was getting my belts through the Globetrotter camps up until the same week I got my brown belt from Christian was the first time I met Preet. At this point, I was already competing in the UK. Like I used to enter like open weight black belt divisions as a purple belt, just because I like suffering. And then I met Preet as a brown belt, as I got my brown belt, and he bullied the life out of me. I remember seeing him on the instructors list, and I was thinking, Estonia, who's heard of Estonia? I'm going to smoke this guy. They don't have a jiu-jitsu scene. And he bullied the life out of me. He like abused me the way he like just controlled me. I was like, there's a massive hole in my jiu-jitsu. And he said to me, like, I was like, look, I don't know what the hell just happened. What was that? And he said, oh, you keep your elbows open. And I was like lying on the floor, like side control, doing this, like my elbows tucked in, thinking, I'm not like, that's like, I'm not white belting my arms everywhere. My arms are pretty tucked in. And, the following camp in Heidelberg, I did his class, and he did a side control defense class. And it was the first time I'd ever seen Hawking and Running Man, his kind of like grilled chicken system. I was like, oh no, I definitely keep my elbows open. I see what he means now.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it kind of changed my entire perspective on jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of where my conceptual stuff eventually went. Is I've said this like in a lot of the videos of like I've got on YouTube, and I've said it in like thousands of different ways, is that jiu-jitsu is very much predicament solution. Like someone does X, we do Y. Like everything has to have like an action answer. Like like you're a coach as well, like and how many times like someone will say, like, you'll teach a class and like you'll do a technique, and then someone will say, oh, what if they put their hand here? And you'd be like, oh, then you need to do this thing. Like when you're doing side control defenses, like, well, what if their arm is behind your head? Or what if their knee's close to your body? What if their knee is flat to the ground? And it's like, you have all these different scenarios and Rolodex of techniques that it made getting to brown belt actually quite arduous, because how much do you actually have to remember? Like, when you're rolling, like, oh, what do I do if their arms here? What do I do if their legs here? What do I do if they're passing a bit straight or a bit more angled? And it's like, that makes jiu-jitsu seem so huge. The way Preet kind of explained it to me, and the way like when I first started he used to come to the UK, was trying to change the perspective of jiu-jitsu to more like a combat sport. So instead of predicament solution, like combat sports like wrestling and boxing, you have a defensive posture. You learn to you cover your hips in wrestling, and you have like a squatted stance. And in boxing, you cover your chin. And then everything you do is always from that stance. And then you always return to that stance. Like it's no longer, you have the perfect answer to everything that could go wrong for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you keep your chin up, if you keep your arms tight, if you keep your posture down in wrestling, in theory, as long as you don't really open up, you'll never get taken down. Because you never let anyone behind your knees, you never let anyone in your armpits, you never let anyone behind your head. In theory, if you keep your hands next to your chin, you should be able to survive Floyd Mayweather.
Mm-hmm.
You won't move, you won't throw a single thing at him, but you won't die. And that's kind of where like my jiu-jitsu then got completely changed, is that there is the same thing for jiu-jitsu. There is a posture as good as covering your chin or the wrestling posture. And so all of a sudden, like, instead of this infinite number of like, what do you do here? What do you do here? The answer is always the same, is what was your posture doing when you were attacked? And if it was open, well, you have your answer.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having like 100 different side control defenses, 100 different guard passes, this one posture fixed everything. So it's like, imagine getting to like the brown belt of boxing and then learning you can cover your chin. That's goddamn insane.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so to say there was a hole in my grappling at that point, it was the equivalent of that. It was the equivalent of being told, you got this far in boxing by doing counterpunching, but you never learned to cover your chin.
Mm-hmm.
And then taught me to cover my chin. And so that's now changed how I teach jiu-jitsu, because I no longer teach all these different predicament solutions of, these are like, side control defense classes or mount defense classes or anything like that, or guard passing classes. It's always the same posture. And then we almost like shadow box from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you learn like how to survive in the chaos of jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn counterpunching way down the line, but to learn that defensive posture, you need to take it as serious as a boxer would or a wrestler would. It needs to be every day for like years before you even learn like a single leg defense.
And,
like a single leg defense.
And so, with the posture of jiu-jitsu, when you say the posture of jiu-jitsu, what would be a way to explain that to people so they would understand? Is simple of terms of covering your chin. Would you say in closing your elbow space would be the best way for people to that are listening right now to be able to understand what you mean?
I remember doing a seminar with Ryan Hall probably 10 years ago when he came over for the ADCCs in the UK. And he said it then. I should have taken him more seriously at the time. So it's not like it's new information. But he said that control positions in jiu-jitsu is who is in between the other person's knees and armpits, knees and elbows, I think he said. And so if you think of side control, you're in that space, mount, you're in that space, back control, you're in that space, close guard, you're in that space. And then I remember one of Braulio's black belts, Chu Kwong Man, he said a similar thing. It's like, as important as that space is, don't let anyone behind your knee as well. Mm-hmm. So like if you're passing someone's guard, glue your heel into your asshole. And so all of a sudden you see that relationship then to wrestling. It's in wrestling, you never let anyone behind your leg, you never let anyone in your armpit, and you never let anyone behind your head. How's that any different to jiu-jitsu? So never let anyone, so instead of like covering like the T-Rex arms, because even in wrestling, like if you're standing upright in wrestling, someone's going to get under that gap and get their underhooks back. Instead, it's keeping your elbows down and not letting them get in there in the first place. So as a base position, like imagine like the way I actually teach like some of my beginners if they don't get it is I get some finger tape out. I put finger tape like an inch off their elbow, like an inch up their forearm here. If for people listening, it's like imagine like an inch up your forearm, just like put some tape along it and just hide that tape in your hips, and that's it. That's the answer to all jiu-jitsu. And so
that's so true though. As a whole, I just lost a match. It was a super fight and it's fighting a really tough competitor. And I lost the match. There was about 2 seconds. I knew as soon as it happened where he had foot on hip and I was reaching to his lapel, and it's something I would never do, but I'm standing up, I'm holding his lapel, he had foot on hip, and I'm trying to catch the other shin. And I didn't even think, and I was in a triangle before I knew it. And I was like, as soon as he got it, I was like, what? Why was that space open? Why did I start to open up like that? But just keeping that space closed protects you in that position.
From everything. And it not only does it defend against positional problems, it also defends chokes and joint submission problems. So no guard and no control position can exist if those spaces aren't inhabited. Like, that's why we learn to shrimp. Is what you're doing in shrimping is reconnecting your elbow to your arm, elbow to your knee. You're getting them out of that space. It's the first thing you learn in jiu-jitsu. You just never giving context for it. And the same with the first white belt guard pass. You drive your elbows into their knees, and you get your elbows back down to your hips. Why? Because they're out of that space. And it's like a basic defense from half guard is you lift your knee up and push their leg to the floor. So now they're no longer inhabiting the back of your knee. De La Riva, you drive your shin into the back of their kneecap. So they're no longer controlling the back of your knee. We do this all the time. It's just we've never made the connection that we're doing the same thing everywhere. And so it defends all positional problems. But then when it comes to chokes, and it's really fun watching this in the gi, is that you have a choke hand, which is the one that's gone and grabbed your collar, or like a rear naked choke, it's like the one that's gone around your neck. And then you have a control hand, which is the one that's stopping you from turning. And if you keep your armpits closed, there's no way someone can reach under your armpits, like hold on to your other side of your lapel to stop you from turning. So someone goes into your lapel, you just follow where their arm came from. You just go. No chokes. And then when it comes to leg locks, again, there's always outliers and everything.
Of course.
But for a joint lock to work, you control the one above and below the one you want. So if you want to armbar someone, it's shoulder and wrist. If it's knee bar, it's ankle and hip. If it's ankle lock, it's foot and knee. So the furthest joints that anyone can submit are your wrist and your ankle, which means that the next available joint they need to control are your elbow and your knee. If I can cover those two things, in theory, the furthest joints that you can submit are now unsubmittable. So that one position defends all chokes, all positions, and all joint locks. So if that's the answer to every bad thing in jiu-jitsu, why do we spend time learning anything else? Because now it's no longer knowledge, it's timing. And this is what makes it fun, is actually you saying that about your fight, is that we're long enough in it to actually go, why did I do that? Why did I leave that space open? Yet we never give that to white belts. So all of a sudden they have to ask all these daft fucking questions. When if they just had that from day one, like they walk in and they get we take them to the side and go, look, do this forever, you'll be fine. It's only when you reach out, you're going to die. Then they've solved all their issues from day one. Because then anytime they ever fuck up, you just go, where's your elbow? Oh shit, I opened it. And now they can self-critique. And it's almost like we make ourselves no longer a fountain of knowledge, like a teacher of jiu-jitsu. We're more like a boxing coach, because now we give them drills for timing, not dead drills of knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that makes perfect sense. I think, and see, something that's unique is that we are from completely different places, but these are things that when I was a purple belt is when I opened my gym, and I had trained before having a coach. Off of Eddie Bravo books, off of the normal, the typical ways that you could train. And then I had a coach, and he was super helpful. And he's still my coach. But when he moved at one point, he just moved a half an hour away from us, but it was just too hard to get to his gym during class times and work. And so we ended up a group of us that were all from the same team. We just started training together, and we had to learn a lot on our own. And having these principles or these concepts that hold true to everything were so important. But something that you didn't mention, you talked about the knee elbow space from the defensive perspective. But what people may not recognize is if we use that in reverse, that's how we're getting all of our offense in jiu-jitsu too. All of my attacks are by dominating the knee elbow space.
Yeah, actually, that's quite an interesting one. I actually just taught a private just to a guy from a different gym, and part of that is, and this is actually quite a funny one when you do mount classes, is that you start mount from like sitting over someone's like stomach, and then the first thing anyone ever does when you do a mount class is open up the elbows. Like, this is how you open up the elbows. So you do like, I don't know, walking your hand up their elbow, or you like do a squat off their hips to push their arms open. Instead of looking at it in the sense of, instead of having side control, north, south, and mount, you just have armpit control, and you just replace what is in the armpit. And so side control is arm and hip, north, south is 2 arms, and mount is 2 hips. So all you're ever doing is just replacing one thing and putting something else there. So instead of having 3 very separate control positions, you have one control position that you're very fluid with. But how's that? That's pretty much what every black belt does. It's only, again, white belts, you have this like, people get mount and abandon mount quite early because they can't get anything to work. Because opening up someone's elbows works really well in drilling, never works in sparring. But if you look at the reverse of what you just said. If you're always attacking the armpits and keeping those armpits open, jiu-jitsu becomes easy. And this is where this defensive stuff actually then becomes quite infuriating, is that because that isn't stressed enough, the importance of the armpits, people release it. They give armpits back. They earn them, like they get their pass, they open up the armpits, and then they just forget about them. They transition and they let the armpit close. Like, that should be gold. You earn that, keep it. At no point will a wrestler earn the back of someone's knee and go, "Yeah, I'm going to give it back now." Like, it's never going to happen. A wrestler gets your armpit, your neck, or your leg. You're going to know about it, and they're never going to give it you again. And that's how we should look at jiu-jitsu. We're doing a martial art. It should be a sport, and we're messing up in a lot of those aspects.
I think that's so important to note. Is it's just so tough for people when they start, because everything's so broad in jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Something that I have found when teaching this stuff, and I was curious if you've dealt with this, and if you've dealt with it, how you overcame it. But something I found when teaching this stuff is my guys that are so new, even not even so new, even under 2 years of training, my guys that are still white belts, I feel like when I teach them conceptually, they struggle to comprehend it until they are later on at like bluish belt, even past kind of blue belt, even a good blue belt, to understand it. Do you ever deal with that when trying to teach like newer people concepts like this?
I think part of the problem with, again, it's I'm not saying this about any gym in particular, but I'm talking from like previous experience and how I used to teach. When you have a newbie start, they always land like whatever the class is that night. As in, so it's you land in a random part of jiu-jitsu and then just try and figure it out from there on out, and it becomes like very different journeys for everyone. Instead of like a very simple, can we give this information to someone on day one, and then just keep on reinforcing it. So every drill works backwards to it. Like every drill has to mention this idea. So you don't just like go talk about this concept once and then go, right, let's do a side control class. Like you talk about this concept on day one, and then everything you ever do is always back to that concept. So when we do like a drill, like we'll do the dead part of it, like look at the details, like the finish, and then we'll go like maybe one step backwards and then fight to get to that point. So the person on the bottom is covering it, but they're doing various levels of resistance. They are being quite open if the person isn't comfortable, or being quite tight if the person's super comfortable. But it's always that reinforcement, the same idea every single time. It should be, if you teach them like, a pass happens, then a side control happens, you get a full sense of earning. Like it has to be, you pass and you work for that side control. It has to be earned. And so say if you're doing like I don't know, like a arm bar or something from side control, like a pull the arm and spin around to get the arm bar. You go from the pass, and then you'd have that person on the bottom give various levels of cover of the concept of being super relaxed and like armbar happens, or super fucking tight. And now they have to like, and then you have that again, it's something that we don't have in jiu-jitsu. We don't have that conversation of like, this is what has been a funny thing about lockdown is that there's been very little difference between having a grappling dummy and a human partner. Like everyone's been able to train with a grappling dummy. That shouldn't be the case. Like that no way should be the case. And so having that conversation with your partner and saying, look, can you do this for me next time? Or can you up the level? Can you lower the level? Oh, that was good. Or like having your partner feed back to you, or like having your partner do stuff for you and go, right, well, I did this for you. Can you do that for me? Like, can you do this? Can you do this? And then so like make your drill more interactive that way instead of like just reps. Like I said to my guys, like, I don't care how many reps you do. Don't do 10 or 20 or an arbitrary number that you think is important, or 5 minutes or 3 minutes. Doesn't matter. Do one. Do it really well though. Have that conversation of what you actually wanted out of that drill. And so that's how we then reinforce those concepts from day one, is that if we're doing it, it's always on every drill. Like you do the dead part, get the detail right, and then have that kind of well, not positional sparring, because again that implies an open fight. It should be active drilling. It's sparring, but with a designated winner. Like it's your drill, you're going to learn, but I'm going to give you various levels of resistance depending on how you're doing. And so then the white belts get super comfortable. Then they can build up to hunting those gaps on someone because they're being super tight. Or say if they're the person on their back, keeping those gaps closed and saying, shit, no, you can't armbar me if I'm closed. It makes sense.
I think that's really, really a cool way to teach. I would probably put it in this term. You're trying to teach people how to learn on their own. Am I correct? I guess the example I would give maybe is like, if I'm going somewhere, maybe one of my friends moves 45 minutes away and I start to drive to their house, I use my GPS. And every time I go to their house, I use my GPS. If I don't use my GPS, most likely it's going to be very hard for me to find it because I'm so focused on my GPS. Like same with a coach. If every time I have a question, my first response is, every time a guard pass doesn't work or every time I'm struggling with something, my first response is I should go ask my coach so he can hold my hand, so he can do it for me. But when you teach in this conceptual thing, something I always tell my coaches, I have a coaches group at my gym, something I always tell them is focus on the why. Why does this work? Why does this happen? Because if I can teach you the why when it doesn't work for you, then you can say, okay, wait, why did it work? Why, so if I can't answer that again, it's not going to work. Right. And so I think that I really love the approach when it comes to teaching, but the way you kind of explained it. And this was, I think I listened to you on the Sonny Brown breakdown. One of my blue belts sent it to me and was like, dude, you got to listen to this. And I know the only reason he sent it to me was because he's like, you got to listen to this. You should have this guy on your podcast. He didn't say it, but I knew what he wanted. But
thank you to him.
Yeah. So, and I guarantee you he's listening because he was actually telling me this last night. I told him I was going to interview you and he's like, oh, I'm so excited. When does it come out? And, but the idea, I think there was I think something could have been misconstrued during that is I think sometimes people think when you teach conceptually, you don't teach techniques, right? You don't teach specific techniques. And so I'm assuming here, maybe you don't, maybe you only just every time everybody asks a question, you just go elbow, knee, space, and that's all you say, right? But I'm assuming that you do teach specific techniques and then show how they apply to that main principle. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as in service teaching the techniques for the technique's sake, as in be a carbon copy of me. I'm teaching the technique to be an example of the concept in action. Like teaching maths. Like you teach sums to teach how the equations work. You don't just teach them, that's the equation you need. This is how this is how numbers work. Here's some examples of numbers at work. And so that should be the same way of how I'm showing the jiu-jitsu. I'll show a prime example is the last class I taught was about the relationship between inside and outside guards. So an inside guard being butterfly or single leg X, one where you're in between their legs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the outside base guards are De La Riva and close guard. And the relationship between the submissions. So an outside base guard is better for upper body submissions like arm bars, triangles, and platters. And inside base guard is better for leg locks, leg entries.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at those 4 guards, looked at a couple of submissions from them to see the entry into platter, triangle, heel hook. But then showed how they blended together, showed like, the relationship between a closed guard and a De La Riva or a butterfly and a single leg X. But then once that was kind of settled in, teaching the why of like those were important. Like I remember I was in Amsterdam doing a camp, 10th Planet camp about a month ago, and a great purple belt out there, Raul. He's a fantastic leg locker, but he's playing a lot of inside base guards. He's already given me away his game. Like I now know he wants to play legs.
Mm-hmm.
So I shut down his guard and I go on the inside myself. Now he can't play his game. But it's that kind of reading of, if I just said, inside, outside base guards, what the hell does he mean? But if I give these couple of examples, like, right, if he's always forcing his legs on the inside, you know that there are leg entries here. Shut them down. Or if you know someone's like a triangle player, just keep forcing legs in the middle. Now they can't play.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's like there's I usually pick a concept and then I pick a couple of examples of the concept and then show like it in action and then let them build their own out of that. Because I haven't now said to them, you have to be a leg locker. We're not 10th Planet. You have to be an outside guard player. We're not traditional jiu-jitsu. Form your own game. See these relationships between them. Become your own grappler. I'm not just teaching you. This has to be your game. Figure it out now. Like, this is yours.
And man, that is
Hey guys, just wanted to interrupt this episode really quick. I told you that this is really the time for me. This episode, when we recorded it, was the time that I started to think in and understand jiu-jitsu concept. And that is, when you hear me talk about chest over chest, that is what I'm talking about, is a concept. I'm teaching an idea of guard passing, and it's this idea that completes all guard passes. You have to understand, to finish a guard pass, you have to flatten your opponent. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You have to flatten your opponent. And the best way to flatten somebody is, of course, what Chris and I were talking about. It's with an underhook. But here's the problem. Everybody knows that now. And so it's very hard to find those underhooks. And really, when you understand what the pinch is, you will understand that underhooks just accomplish a very specific task, but chest over chest also accomplishes that same task. And that task is to flatten our opponent. And so right now at simplifyingjujitsu.com, we are selling a seminar I did at Watson Martial Arts, and it is on chest over chest. There is all kinds of question and answer in that seminar. There is some additional videos. We actually included a 30-minute seminar called The Pinch, and this was actually a fun little thing we did for my diaper party. I taught a seminar for my diaper party, and I taught this idea of controlling somebody's distance and their ability to spin with this idea called the pinch. Both of these are available at simplifyingjujitsu.com, and I will make sure to link the episode, or link this in the episode's description. But this is definitely something you should check out if you want a little more information on it. I actually have 2 other videos, me teaching at Watson Martial Arts and me teaching at Prada Jiu-Jitsu in Kansas City, Missouri. And it is just kind of 5-10 minutes of me explaining more of chest over chest. And so if that is interesting to you, and maybe you're just not confident enough to buy the chest over chest seminar yet, just check out some of those free videos that we have on YouTube. I will be sure to link them in the description. I am so confident that you will want to know more, that I'm able to just give away big pieces of knowledge for free on my YouTube channel. And so that's all I have. Let's go ahead and jump back into this conversation that I'm having with Chris Paynes.
This is yours.
And man, that is it's funny. I always like laugh when you talk about it, because there are just certain things that, like I said, were never taught to me, or I would assume never taught to you, but we have the same ideas or the same theories on them. For example, the way you just talked about, you find your concept and that's what you build your teaching on. So that's kind of actually with my coaches group, I taught we do like a bi-monthly seminar, basically just helping these guys teach. And I did one last week on teaching your first jiu-jitsu class. We added a bunch of guys to the group. And so we do it, teaching your first jiu-jitsu class. And I explained my formula for teaching a jiu-jitsu class is I will do one concept, one overarching theme, and then 3 moves that apply to that concept. And it's a really simple formula to do, but you just said this exact same thing. And it's funny that we kind of both have found that is one of the better ways to teach. And I would argue, not talking bad about anybody, but most places I go, they just they show random things. There's even if they're showing from the same position, you watch instructionals and you're going to learn a spider guard instructional, and everything is here are 50 random moves from spider guard, and there's no conceptual idea. There's no application on how it is. It's just, hey, here's 50 moves. Figure them out, right? And then they're like, oh, you should be impressed. There was 10 hours of content there. You should be really excited about that. Why do you feel like, or do you have any thought on why people still teach this way? Like still teach with the randomness of jiu-jitsu?
Teach the randomness of jiu-jitsu. I think, again, a lot of it's due to it being a martial art. The new school are very different. That, the Kit Dales, Lachlan Giles of the world are definitely coming through in a different way. But looking at the old school methodology of dead drilling, like do 50 reps of this triangle, and that worked once upon a time. And people will carry on what their coaches did, but some people are more willing to step out and go. It's like this reverence for a teacher, for a sensei. I remember going to a Gracie Barra school beginning of the year before lockdown hit, and I walked in. This purple belt realized I was a black belt. He started calling me professor, and I was like, "Who?" It's Chris. Like, what? Maybe again, it's going back to going to a wrestling gym or a boxing gym, because I did 6 years of Muay Thai. At no point would I call my coach professor. Like, he would have kicked me. But it's that weird kind of relationship we have to that coach. We have this weird reverence of them as a teacher. We have to do as they do, and then we carry it on ourselves. Instead of, they're not a fountain of knowledge. Jiu-jitsu is not that complicated. They're just there as the person who works our timing, and gives us the drills to work on those, the shadow boxing drills or the pad drills. And all of a sudden, you change their relationship to you. And I think the 50 spider guard, do 50 times kind of thing is going to die out, just due to a more liberal approach to jiu-jitsu. It doesn't attract those kind of people. And also our vocabulary for explaining jiu-jitsu is getting better. Like, everyone's, the rising tide raises all ships. And you've got Dan Herr out there explaining stuff. You've got, again, Lachlan, you've got fanatics doing amazing things. And everyone's talking jiu-jitsu more, and finding better ways of describing it. And that's now like, cool. Everyone's describing it better. I need to describe it even better than that. And the 50 reps people are just going to disappear. Again, the problem with the 50 reps people is that, you can learn 50. Like, say if you're doing a triangle, you do 50 reps of the triangle, but then you're never really given that time to problem solve the triangle. Like why does the triangle work? Like, what can change a triangle? What can be the difference between a triangle working and not working? That's not done in those 50. You just have a dead partner going just there, and you throw 50 triangles at them. But then you go do it in a competition. You might get that triangle, but all of a sudden it's not working. You're like, what? Why? I got the triangle perfect. But you never spent time understanding what the triangle is.
I think that is, man, I think that's super important. I think that's something that, and the people you name, you named the Lachlan Giles, you named the Kit Dales, those guys, there was a big level of having to learn themselves, having to, and that's for a lot of people, necessity was the reason that they found that, hey, a list of moves you need to learn these 30 moves before you get your blue belt. It doesn't work because there is no, not none, cause that is how people learned at first, but then they would also just fight to the death over and over again. And then eventually get good enough. Right. But it's the example that I always give is you watch most closed guard armbar videos on YouTube, where you go somewhere and somebody is teaching an intro class. They always show the closed guard armbar, right? And they show the exact same way that they were taught, even if they're good at the closed guard armbar, and the way that they were taught doesn't work. The just throw your leg over the head and create a really strong angle with a big movement doesn't work because as we were just talking about, you don't get in the elbow knee space. If you don't get in the elbow knee space, you don't finish the closed guard armbar. But most people still teach it the exact same way, without even thinking about it, just out of tradition. I was shown it this way. In my mind, I still think that's how I do it. And so that is what happens. I think that is such a cool thing. I love that you say that it's going to, or that it's changing, because it obviously is, and that you think that those people will die off. But this is completely curiosity. You're not. I usually won't ask questions unless I have a pretty good idea what the answer are. But I'm just going to ask: do you guys shrimp up and down the mats at your gym?
No, not anymore.
I knew
it. Since I started doing this, no, because no. We don't warm up. We just walk in and we just we just talk, and then I'll start explaining stuff. I think it was actually part of what changed maybe my we might start doing a little bit of agility drills, but soon. What kind of changed my perspective on it was I remember doing a seminar at one of the first Globetrotter camps back in 2014 with Keenan. He just started doing worm guard, and people started. We did 3 hours of worm guard, and then we asked Keenan questions. And so, what's your warm up? He goes, "Oh, I drill, and now spar." I was like, "Wait there." So one of the absolute best that's been around doesn't warm up; he drills. Okay, maybe we're all doing something wrong. And this then comes back to something that you said, just is that we teach how we were taught. So I got this stuff from Preet. I will give him complete credit for everything I am. He got his grilled chicken from watching, from obviously training a lot and studying. But he remembers watching ADCC 2013, Braulio versus Galvao. And how Galvao could not get past Braulio's guard. It was like, what the hell's happening here? So you studied the life out of it. I am not far from Braulio's. He is the next town from me. Braulio's steamer, his home gym, the man himself, is about 30 miles away from me. It's like a 40 minute drive. So he is someone who does this: grilled chicken, open guard, impassable guard, keeping elbows tucked into armpits. Some of his students will occasionally go through here, or are not too far from us, and their mind is blown when we do that stuff. And it's like, so wait there. We're doing it courtesy of a YouTube video and some guy in Estonia. Yeah, you're under the guy himself.
Yeah,
and can't do it. And that's again coming back to how we are and how other black belts are. I've not met a black belt yet that doesn't do what we do, what I've spoken about. The whole closing the gap behind the knee, closing the elbow space. We all do it. The difference is our ability to explain what we do now to our students compared to telling them what we did, so eventually they'll become like us. And that's what I think is happening maybe at Braulio's gym. I haven't been there in a very long time. They're teaching how they were initially taught: do closed guard, do a closed guard arm bar, do this. And eventually, if you do this enough times and follow the same route, eventually you'll become me. Instead of do what I do now, become me faster.
Exactly. And that is, man, that is so true. It's so important to understand is they don't have to have the same struggles that we had.
That we did. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And so it's for people, a different example would be if I built a business, and I did really well building this business. And I started from the ground up. Like whatever the business was, but I start from the ground up, and I turn cleaning toilets into a huge commercial toilet cleaning company, right? But at first I was cleaning the toilets myself. And then I want to pass the baton on to my son. I want to teach him to be a great businessman. And I go in and I say, well, you have to clean toilets. That's the only way to start. That doesn't make sense, because I wouldn't be doing it now. I would say, hey, this is how I run the business now. You don't have to do what I did in the beginning, because that's been figured out for you. You get a head start on where I started from. And so that's what we talk about with my students. Like, my goal is not to get you as good as me. My goal is to get you as good as me much faster than I did it, much faster than 12 years. And, we try to figure out different hacks and different ways to do it. Just rewinding back just for a second, I'm glad that someone else agrees with me that warm-ups in jiu-jitsu are stupid, because people will literally, I'm not kidding. I have never said anything on this podcast that has made people more angry. I did a podcast, it was just by myself, and the title of the podcast was "Warm-ups Are Stupid." Okay. And the idea was, look, when is the last time that you jogged in a jiu-jitsu match? Right? When is the last time that you, shrimped without any weight on you in a jiu-jitsu match? I find that they're good when I am teaching kids and teens classes, because it gets them ready for the class. But for adults, instead of wasting 15 minutes every night shrimping up and down the mats, what if we spent those 15 minutes actually doing jiu-jitsu? And so actually positional sparring something or something along those lines. And I made a post about it. And I was like, please listen to the episode before you comment stuff. And people were obviously not listening to the episode, because they
pitchforks everywhere.
Exactly. And they were thinking that I was saying you should come in and roll live cold. I'm like, no, that's not what I was saying. Listen to the episode. I literally say to not do that. But people will, that is one tradition, that people will fight you to the death on. People are going to message you and be mad that you don't want to be called professor. People are it's the traditionalism in jiu-jitsu is pretty insane. So my argument is, and has been look, if I'm going to respect one tradition that doesn't make sense, I now have to respect all of them. And so that's why, if the tradition doesn't make sense, I don't respect it. No. And so, another question, when guys come into your gym, do they bow before getting on the mat?
No. Why would they do that?
Okay.
I've heard such crazy stories. I mean, again, maybe this is why I latched onto Globetrotters quite early. Is that I remember the first time I went to actually Gracie Barha gym, and they said I wasn't allowed to train there because I had a plain white gi on. I said I could do one session, but I had to buy the Barha gi afterwards. So I was like, why would I do that? Or the amount of people who say they can't train at a different gym because they're part of this affiliation. It's like, I could understand that maybe years ago. Again, this reverence to a teacher and this martial arts, Japanese, honorable loyalty, whatever approach. But that's not the way it is now.
It isn't.
You get left in the dust that way. And so all those kind of weird traditions, do the obvious hygienic things. Wear your shoes when you leave the mats.
Yeah.
But facing the wall to tie your belt, or bowing to your instructor and calling them sensei or professor or something, or having to wear a certain color gi because that's what students wear. No. Let's not do any of that anymore. It seems stupid. It's just taking up time. When we could be doing way more important things.
Mm-hmm. it's man, it's bizarre. It really is. And I'm sure that the people will be, maybe not, because I think a lot of the people that listen to the podcast now have been weeded out. They
He got rid of them.
At this point, we're on episode like 60 something. They probably know.
Yeah.
But like with your students, like I always tell my students, hey, and they'll always have different complaints about things and stuff. And I'll always ask them, hey, what's my job? And like, I don't know, to teach you jiu-jitsu. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all my job is. My job isn't to, people have this theory that if we all bow before we get on the mats, it teaches this sense of respect. And that is where, that is this benefit from jiu-jitsu. But that is so stupid because, like for me, if you said, hey, we're going to get rid of the law of murdering people, I'm still not going to go and murder people, because I know that is wrong, right? Making a law about it is not what makes it right or wrong. So making a law on bowing before we go on the mat, that's not what makes it, I get it now. I need to be respectful now when I bow. And like, actually we had a guy, one of my white belts, I'm sure it was from a YouTube video or something, he bowed before he came on the mat like 2 nights ago, and we were roasting him. We were just making fun. Everybody was doing it. Like everybody was mocking him. So just on that, as we've digressed from really good jiu-jitsu principles to getting annoyed by the tradition of jiu-jitsu, I was just curious about this. Have you dealt with people that didn't like you, were mad about the fact that you've never, as you say it, you are a jiu-jitsu black belt that has never done jiu-jitsu. Do people get mad about that?
I think I've managed to luckily surround myself with people that don't care. Like, maybe I don't play with people from those kind of hardcore lineages. I'm not sure, but maybe in a sense of, so in this town in Stafford, we've got 3 BJJ gyms. We've got ourselves. We've got another BJJ gym that uses the exact same location, just on a different night. No affiliation to us. And we've got a Gracie Baja. And in our local area, we've got maybe in a 25-mile radius, probably a dozen, 15 BJJ gyms. And we all play together. We all visit each other. We all cross-train together. There's no animosity. Like, we all compete against each other when we go to competitions. But like outside of that, we're all friends. Mm-hmm. Aside from Gracie Baja, like they don't even know we exist. So I remember seeing one of the guys at the supermarket during lockdown. He was wearing a British no-gi t-shirt. I was like, oh shit, you do jiu-jitsu? He was like, yeah. I was like, how long have you been training for? I was like, oh, like 3 years. Oh, cool, where at? Oh, Gracie Baja. I was like, oh, cool. He goes, oh, you do jiu-jitsu? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, what belt are you? Black belt. Where from? Like half a mile away from your gym. There's other gyms in this town. Dude, we've been here for 10 years. Like,
that is awesome.
How don't you know there are other gyms? Like, there are lots in this area. And I even said to my students, I say, go elsewhere. Don't come to our gym. Like, I'd rather you go train elsewhere. Go get much different sparring partners. You'll get better because this gym is suffering. Like, everyone's gaps are too closed. Like, every roll is hard. Go elsewhere. You have a whale of a time. But yeah, so I don't think, so maybe not like mad at us for having that kind of approach, but just those people from this kind of lineage just avoid us.
Yeah.
Which, okay, that's fine by me. No, we'll be fine. We'll survive.
All right. So I have 2 questions left. One is absolutely not jiu-jitsu related at all. But this is just something I was curious during the podcast. Why do you use miles and not kilometers? Is that a stupid question? Is that
I'm pretty sure it's just as forward and as European as England and Britain once was, we're still so backwards. So we are just regressing at pace right now. And so despite the whole of Europe being in kilometers, we still use miles. We use stone and pounds, and kilos and yards and feet. And we have to know so many different rules of measurement just to form conversations with people. It's still miles over here for some reason.
Okay, I just wasn't sure about that. I just like I'm American, so I don't know anything about anywhere else but America, and so I was like, is this common knowledge? I was sure that they all sip tea and talk about kilometers all day. Like I didn't know.
No, so we still use miles. We still use feet to describe height. We still use stone, because I know my weight in kilos because of jiu-jitsu competitions. So when someone says, I had the conversation with someone new, it's like, what weight you want to fight at? Oh, like 13 stone. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. What's that in kilos? I've abandoned that rule of measurement. I was actually in the States. I did a tour with Charles Harriott back in February. I think I just got back to the UK just before lockdown hit. And that was driving on the right side of the road. Like we drive on the left. But I still felt kind of at home because it was in miles and stuff. But yeah, driving on the wrong side of the car on the wrong side of the road, that was just. I can't remember if I told Charles this, so hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast. But I was driving down, I think we were in North Carolina or Georgia at the time. And I think we drove like 2,500 miles in like 10 days. We went from Gainesville, where Charles is from, and we drove all the way up to my friend Brad and Greg over in Connecticut. So we did Savannah, we did Asheville, North Carolina, we did all the way up to Maryland and Washington DC, then around to New Jersey and Connecticut and back to New York. I remember doing like a 300 or 400 mile stint in the car. Oof. And Charles was asleep, and I was starting to like get a bit bleary eyed, and I kind of like went into instinctual mode and like tried to change gear. But for me, changing gear is the left hand. But that's the door handle for your cars. So we're going like tearing down some highway in North Carolina, and I opened up the driver's side door and I almost disappeared out the gift shop.
Oh my gosh!
And he's like fully asleep. I'm like, I can't tell him that. He almost woke up to find me not in the car. Fuck your cars.
Yeah, some of those things, man. Some of those drives, they get to you. I think I've told this on my podcast before. I competed one time. I live in St. Louis. We're competing in Chicago. It's about 5 hours away, but we didn't leave this tournament until like I think we got there at 8 a.m. Because I competed first. My buddy competed, so we didn't really have time to leave. And then I fought in the open class, and the open class ran late. We didn't get our medals till like 9. We hadn't eaten dinner. And so we are going to now eat dinner and then drive home. And it's just me and him. And we're probably like 30 minutes from home. And he goes, "Hey, Josh, are you tired?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he's like, "Because you're driving in the middle of the road between two lanes." And I was like, "Oh, sorry. I was like, "Nobody's on the road. It's 2 a.m, dude. It's fine." Yeah. And, but yeah, sometimes, man, that's the secret, the unspoken part of jiu-jitsu is being able to drive really late at night or in a different country and having to learn the roads.
Yeah, and how to survive long ass competition days.
Yes. Oh man, competitions are the worst.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a private with a guy. He's a white belt, and he said he was like gassing out at the beginning of his competitions. And this actually goes back to the whole warm up thing we're on about. Is that he goes like, how do you deal with stress when it comes to competitions? I go, I have a sleep. Like if you're normally find me up until about 5 minutes before the fight asleep. I literally get like one of my friends literally say like, when you know I'm about to go on, like just come wake my ass up and I'll go fight. Because if I said to you like, in the gym, like you could probably rock up to the gym like 10 minutes after having a nap at home, like, wake up, go to the gym and roll. You'll be fine. Like, on the ball. Yeah, you go to a competition, you do some sort of weird 45-minute stretching routine that you never do again in your life. And that's supposed to make your competition better. Like, stop stressing out. Have a nap. You'll be fine. It was like I was teaching in Tel Aviv in Israel last year, and they about the day before I arrived, they said, "Oh, the Israeli nationals are tomorrow, and we've signed you up for a super fight." I'm like, "Cool. Who is it?" Oh, he's like the main MMA guy out of Israel. I'm like, okay. And then I get there, it's like the main event. They've like got a big trophy like for the winner. I'm like, oh, okay, this is like really serious. And like, they announced me as some sort of invader from like the UK, like to come and take like the country's pride.
Oh.
And like I'm teaching a seminar there, so I'm like, I can't lose because how can I teach a seminar about defending everything if I get my ass kicked? And so I think, right, I'm just going to have this is quite a stressful situation. It's like, super damn hard. I'm just going to go for a sleep. And like their coach is like, where's Chris? He's fighting in like 10 minutes. He's like, oh, he's asleep on the chairs over there. They're like, oh, we'll go wake him up and he can fight then. I'm like, yeah, just got up, like, cool, walked on, smashed this guy to death. Like, had a great time. And then yeah, finished. And I was like, that's how you deal with stress. Don't just have a nap.
That's awesome. That's really good. Yeah, that's probably like the one place that you and I differ. When I compete, I roll like 4 rounds before I ever go on because I get cold. My fingers are cold and like my toes are cold. And, like I just I like to be because I always feel like when I'm actually rolling, my hips are moving a little better and stuff. So for me. I always warm up. I warm up by rolling. I just I'll get one of my guys and do 2, 3, 4 rounds, and then like okay, now I'm ready for round 5. Now I'm ready to go.
So I used to be the same. I used to get a guy in the back room, like spar with him a little bit, but now it's just like, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old or something. I fight better when I'm tired and hungry.
That's awesome.
Like a bear that just got woken up, I'm just going to hurt you.
That is awesome. All right, Chris. So we always finish the show with the same question. Okay. So cool. The question is this. Let's say I am a new blue belt and I am at a Chris Payne seminar. Okay. And you're doing question and answer. And at the end of the seminar, I say, Chris, I suck at jiu-jitsu. How do I suck less at jiu-jitsu?
The same thing I say to everyone else. Where's your elbow before you sucked? Like, and that's actually if it's not tied to your thigh, I can give you a rough idea of where you sucked, and that's it. That's my answer to everyone is where is your elbow? If that there isn't tied to your hip flexor, I can tell you where you sucked. And that's it. Same answer every time.
That is great, man. That was a really, really great interview. You knocked it out of the park. I know people are gonna really love this one, man.
I hope so. Like, yeah, I was like, when I saw like you sent me the message and was like, oh, dude, I like the podcast. Let's do one. I was like, cool, let's do it tomorrow. I'm excited for this one. So yeah, I was like, I woke up this morning. Before I left the house, I was like, right, where's my laptop? Where's my webcam? I haven't got it with me, but I even got like a proper microphone with like a wind blocker on it. None of it worked. So I've just gone back to a phone and headphones. But yeah, that's so excited. I was like, dude, I really want to do this podcast, and then I want to make sure it looks good. Fucking went out the window anyway.
You know what? Most of the I probably have had my YouTube channel for like 2 or 3 months or used it. So most of the people that absorb the podcast are going to listen to it. So that's where most of our viewership is. So you didn't have to look pretty. You'll be good with just audio. It'll be good.
Oh, thank God. Thank God.
Is there anything you want to say to finish, Chris?
If anyone's ever interested in anything I've spoken about in any of this, I'm not big enough to ignore people just yet. And so if anyone ever wants to ask me any questions, send me any messages. I'm easily accessible on Facebook or Instagram or anything. I'll reply as soon as I can. If anyone if ever has any questions, I'll come down to the gym with my phone. I'll record videos. Whatever people want. I'm pretty open to spreading. If people are interested in what I know, I'm happy to tell them it. So if anyone in the UK ever wants to come visit, or even further afield, just hit me up. I'm happy to talk about jiu-jitsu all the time. I just want to make people better. So yeah, just come find me if you're interested in my work. And
you also have a YouTube, correct? And
yes.
What is your YouTube name?
It's Chris Payne's BJJ. Will find it if you just type that into YouTube. But if people want to understand my perspective on jiu-jitsu and how Pre taught me, I've got a video. It kind of went semi-viral. It's called How to Defend Everything. It's one of my classes at one of the Globetrotter camps. That video kind of took me around the world. The amount of people who saw that, I'm like, holy hell. I winged it. I had no idea what the hell I was doing at the time. I literally walked on the mat and went, let's see what comes out of my mouth. It turned out it went really well. So if anyone ever is interested in anything I do and wants to learn more about this kind of stuff, it's in a 45-minute video on the Globetrotters YouTube. So just type Chris Payne's BJJ, you'll probably find it. It's called How to Defend Everything.
On a side note, one of my students sent me that. I don't even know how long ago. It wasn't that long ago. But they're like, hey, have you seen this? And they sent me and like, oh man, this is going to be some BS video. And I started watching it and I was like, oh, this is really good. I was like, I really like this one. Like, I'm going to keep this one. And it was funny when I did get, had a student send me that podcast with you. So I'm listening to it and I wasn't really putting together who you were. Then they referenced, you had that video, How to Defend It. I'm like, oh, that's how I've heard of this guy. That makes sense now. But yes, I would definitely recommend that video too. Definitely worth 45 minutes, especially since it's free.
Yeah, exactly.
Worth
all
every
my work's
penny.
Pretty much free. I'm hopefully going to record some more videos soon. I try and do seasons of videos on my YouTube channel, but I'm trying to get better at recording them. So there's loads of free content if anyone's interested in anything I do. But even if it's something that maybe if you want to know something that isn't in one of my videos, just message me. I'm quite happy to answer most things. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for your time. And hopefully if I get over to the States again, or if you end up accidentally in the UK, we'll come roll and we'll share ideas in person. I really enjoy that.
I would love that, man. That sounds like a really cool thing.
No, I absolutely enjoy that too, dude.
All right. Thank you again for being on.
No, thank you. That was great.
And that is the episode. Thank you guys for checking this one out. This one, like I said, for me, it's a lot of different episodes that we look at, that we do these reposts. They're kind of special episodes, but more often than not, it's not the conversations that we had. It's more the relationships that I was able to build, because when you have good relationships with high-level people, you will just get better. I look at how much I've learned from Chris, how much I've learned from all these other high-level guys I've had on the podcast, and it almost is like I'm getting better now faster than ever. And it's because I think I have an even bigger and better group of peers that know how to get good at jiu-jitsu. And so, the funny thing is, and I don't think I've ever said this, I went into this interview kind of on the fence on if Chris was full of it or not. I had heard him on 2 other podcasts, and it was this tough thing where I'm going, man, I really like what this guy's saying, but I wish that these podcasters would ask him about ... And because that's what's interesting about jiu-jitsu is we find this way to explain something like control, right? And protecting your elbow knee space, protecting your hips and your armpits, however we look at controlling somebody. And we have this really specific way as coaches that we will often deliver this information. And the problem is, so often we deliver this information as if it was fact, that came down to us from heaven. We act like it is the only way that this can be said or the only way that it could be understood. But when you look at the idea that I come to these observations because I've trained for a long period of time. Chris comes to these observations because he's trained for a long period of time. We may observe different things, or we may just explain them slightly different. And the problem that people have in jiu-jitsu is then they look that, oh, Josh says this and Chris says this. One must be right and one must be wrong. And I really just don't see this as the idea that is going to help us with progression. It just doesn't make sense to me as like that one person has to be right and one person has to be wrong. A lot of times, if you learn from enough people, you start to conceptualize these ideas that we've all observed in your own way, and you start to explain them in your own way. And so that is kind of the hidden lesson, I guess you would say, from this episode, is just you gotta stop with the, oh, this guy's right, or this guy's smart, or this guy's stupid because he disagrees with what this high-level coach that I like says. So often, if you just didn't have that opinion at all and you just focused on getting better, you would get better. You would stop worrying about the where should my hand placement be because this world champion says this, but this high-level coach who coached a world champion says this. Where do we draw the line? For most of us, I think that the answer is you just learn as much as you can. You just get as many perspectives as you can. Because when we are doing this, Chris is giving the England perspective and I'm giving the American perspective, right? And so when we are willing to learn from each other and learn in that way and stop dealing in such absolutes in jiu-jitsu, the progression is limitless, right? Because you can almost learn from anybody if you start to look at jiu-jitsu that way. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys like this one. Be sure to check out some of the free videos of Chest Over Chest. I linked 2 of them in the description. Be sure to check them both out, or one of them out, or neither of them out, and just buy the instructional or buy the seminar. And I'll make sure to link that in the description too. Without further ado, that's all I have for you guys today. If you are interested in hearing me and Chris talk again, I know that we will do podcasts again soon. But let us know in the comments, let us know with a like, let us know with an email. Just let us know that these are the conversations that you were wanting to hear on the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, and we will be happy to provide more of them. And so that's all I have for you guys today. I hope today's episode was good for you. Hope you learned a little bit, and I hope today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at Jiu-Jitsu. Have a great day, guys.